Hello and welcome into the first ever live edition of Snakes Territory. I'm your host, Jesse Friedman, coming at you here after a Diamondbacks victory over the Miami Marlins. And of course, I am joined by Jack Summers, my co-host here on Snakes Territory. Jack, we're trying on something new here, doing the post-game show thing. Appreciate all of you who are already here in the chat joining us. Should be a good time. And Jack, the Diamondbacks played a pretty good baseball game here in a 6-2 win over the Miami Marlins.
Yeah, definitely a fun night following Diamondbacks baseball. Hope everybody has a good time following us here tonight, too. I feel a little nervous, kind of like they must have felt the first time they did Saturday Night Live or something.
We're not quite as big of a deal as Saturday Night Live, but give us a few more weeks and maybe we'll be right up there. Who knows? This game, Jack, I think was the tone was really set in this game by Brandon Pfaadt. He was very, very good for the Diamondbacks in this one. 5 2/3 innings, 5 hits allowed, 1 run, 2 walks, 6 strikeouts. The question that we're sort of always asking when it comes to Brandon Pfaadt is, did he allow a home run? And in this game, the answer was yes. He did allow a home run somehow on a curveball that was about a foot below the zone to Matt Mervis. A pretty impressive swing there on Mervis's end of things. But nonetheless, Brandon Pfaadt still was able to limit the damage. It was just a solo shot. It wasn't a 3-run home run like we've seen at times in the past. By and large, a really successful day for the D-backs young righty.
Yeah, I mean, it was really impressive. Max Meyer came out just killing D-backs with that slider. He struck out the side in the first, and you're thinking, oh boy, this is going to be a tough one. But Pfaadt matched him. He wasn't maybe quite as dominant with the swing and miss. One of these pitchers had a quality start. One did not, but it was pretty clear who ended up pitching the better game, and that was Brandon Pfaadt. So I'll take 5 2/3, 1 run versus 6 innings, 3 runs anytime.
Yeah, I guess that goes back to the age-old debate over whether quality starts or, an illegitimate stat or whatnot. Because, yes, Max Meyer technically did get one in this game, and Brandon Pfaadt did not. But I'm with you. I think most people would take 5 2/3 and 1 run over Max Meyer's night any day of the week. I will say, at the same time, Torey Lovullo arguably could have left Brandon Pfaadt in this game. He only had 92 pitches. The Marlins had a left-handed hitter coming up, so I guess Torey wanted to play the matchups, and he brought in Jalen Beeks. But nonetheless, it was 92 pitches. We're talking about the bottom of the Marlins lineup here. I don't think that's an out that Pfaadt was incapable of getting. But on the other hand, Jack, we have seen a number of times in the past where Brandon Pfaadt maybe did get left in a batter or two too long, and maybe this is Torey Lovullo kind of correcting a little bit, trying to protect him a little bit more as he gets toward the end of these outings.
I'm sure there was something behind the matchups too. I mean, it was 2 left-handed batters in a row. He let Pfaadt face the first of those 2, and then pulled and brought in Beeks for the second one. So, besides just a right on left issue, there might have been something in the matchup that they see that's even deeper under the hood, where a guy likes to hit the ball. Certain hitters like to hit balls in certain places, and Pfaadt's pitches may usually end up in certain places, and they've got to dial down matchups down to that level, not just lefty-right. So it's hard to say, exactly why you went there, but I'm sure he'll explain it while we're talking. But I was pretty fine with the decision.
I think it was reasonable enough, and certainly it worked out as things turned out. This was a continuation, Jack, of a sort of trend for Brandon Pfaadt early in the season, where it just feels like he's been facing a lot of left-handed hitters. The Marlins stacked their lineup with lefties today. I believe it was 7 out of the 9 in their starting lineup hit left-handed. And certainly there's no surprises there why a team would do that. Pfaadt came in today with a 524 OPS against right-handed hitters, opposing OPS, whereas that number, I believe, was 831 against lefties coming into this game. And this has certainly been a trend for Pfaadt for a little while. But I was surprised to see that entering today, Pfaadt has had roughly a 70 to 30 percent split in left-handed hitters face versus right-handed hitters. He has faced a ton of lefties up to this point in the season, and I know they're talking on the broadcast about how the usage of the changeup, the usage of the curveball, those pitches, that's been a big topic of conversation. Some of that is that those pitches are genuinely becoming bigger pitches for Pfaadt this season. Some of it, I think, is also just that Pfaadt has faced a ton of left-handed hitters so far in the season, and those are going to be his go-to weapons against those guys.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the pitch usage, when you look in small sample sizes, if the guy happens to be facing a lot of one side or the other, it's going to look like they're making a change to their repertoire, but they're not really. However, that changeup was really good today. I mean, he threw 15 of them. He threw 22 of them. He got 15 swings, 4 whiffs, 4 fouls, 7 balls in play, no hits. A lot of soft contact on it, and for 7 balls. So, I mean, that was really impressive to me that the changeup has become that good a weapon for him, that helps him neutralize left-handed hitters. Like you said, that curveball a little bit too in the center portion of the plate, but it was, like you said, almost it was certainly at least 6 inches below the zone. It was way down there. Kind of a little bit of bad luck there.
Pfaadt has allowed 5 homers this season, Jack, and 3 of them have come on that curveball. And I went back and watched all 3 of them, and none of those curveballs were really in bad spots at all. There was one to Nathaniel Lowe, which was down and in, kind of right on the corner, I guess down and into a left-handed hitter. Maybe not an ideal location, but it certainly wasn't a terrible pitch. And then CJ Abrams also went yard on a Pfaadt curveball that I think was off the plate outside, maybe even a little below the zone as well. So, I don't really know what to make of that. Like maybe it does actually say something about the curveball itself, that like it's a pitch where it maybe doesn't have enough movement in order to fool hitters to the degree that you'd like. And so even when it's out of the zone, it can still get hit a little bit. Obviously, this is a pitch that we haven't seen Pfaadt use a ton in the past. So we're still kind of getting acclimated to what this looks like on a game-by-game basis.
I'd have to go look it up. My first gut instinct tells me something to do with release point and tunneling. Obviously, even if the ball's not in the middle of the plate, the hitters are tracking it pretty well. So, why are they able to pick it up early and track it well? It's probably related back to that, I would think, even more than the movement. I mean, I went back and looked at that pitch. It looked like it had plenty of downward movement. I mean, it was moving. I think it's just they're seeing it. They're picking it up early.
Jeff Irving in the comments says, can't quite say a 7th straight quality start from this rotation, but about as close as you can come to it. Encouraging to see this rotation start live up to the expectations. Yes, absolutely. And we will touch more later in the show about what has kind of emerged as a trend here with the Diamondbacks rotation really on a nice run. Still some ground to make up over where you might hope that they would be in the long run, but it has been a nice stretch here over the last week or so. We're going to get into some more numbers about this game today, this 6-2 Diamondbacks win over the Marlins. But before we do that, we want to hear a few words just real quick from Scott and AJ over at Foul Territory.
AJ, it is time for people to get some new clubs, and to do that, they need to go to their local PXG for a fitting, right?
No doubt. I was there today. I've been there before. Last time I was there, they gave me this killer gap wedge. Look at that sweet spot, Scott. It is worn out. That is right in the sweet spot right there. So I went and got new clubs today, new irons. But more importantly, I got this bad boy. I got me a new putter. This is my old putter. It's on order. Yes, that's my putter cover. PXG Mustang putter. Now I'm going to the Allen putter. They talked me into it because I was draining some putts today. Bob, the guy who helped me out, he helped me with my irons. He got them teed up perfectly, but then we went to the putting green. I was draining them putts because that's the most important part of golf.
PXG fittings are fun. Schedule your fitting today. As you can hear from AJ, for a limited time, you could save up to 20% on your entire order. Head over to pxg.com/foul. That's pxg.com/foul to save up to 20% on your entire order. pxg.com/FOUL. Restrictions apply. See site for details.
Jack, let's talk starting pitching here. So the Diamondbacks over their last 7 games now, after a not so great start for this rotation, to put it mildly, but over the last 7 games, they have now thrown 42 combined innings, a 2.36 ERA. That's 11 earned runs over 42 innings. Yes, the streak of quality starts is now over. Brandon Pfaadt technically did not reach that threshold today, but nonetheless still a good start from him and another push in the right direction here for this rotation that seems to be finding its rhythm.
Yeah, for sure. This is exactly what they paid for. This is what they expected to get. Yes, it started late. As far as a couple of turns through the rotation, not so good. Matter of fact, pretty hard. They really tanked the first month numbers quite a bit. But this is really where they need to be. I mean, this is the space that they're in. I talked to Torey Lavelle about this even before the season started, about the synergy you get when you get longer starts, how that protects your bullpen and allows Torey to better manage the bullpen. And of course, if you're getting a decent start out of your starter, it allows the offense to relax and go. We had an article on that today from Alex D'Agostino over at Arizona Diamondbacks on SI, kind of going through that. Mike Hazen was also on Arizona Sports talking about this very same issue. And that's the key, really. So, more, please. That's my only comment about that. I kind of maybe annoyed a couple people this morning with a tweet that posted the year-to-date numbers that were inclusive of the last 6 starts. And it was just a way to show that, hey, there's still a long way to go to achieve, a level of, hey, this is a top half of the league rotation. There are a lot of people that they were going to be a top 5 rotation or at least a top 10, and they still can be. But they got a ways to go to prove that they're going to be able to do this all season long. They have the potential, obviously. They have the track records, but they got to keep going. They got to keep putting it together.
I think it just goes to show how rough things were for the first week or 10 days that they've gone on this run over the last 7 games, which is a pretty decent chunk of the season. And yet you still look up and Brandon Pfaadt is the only starter on this team who has what you'd consider to be a good ERA, right? I think Zach Gallen is in the mid-4s. Eduardo Rodriguez is in the high 4s. Merrill Kelly's been good in 3 of his 4 starts, but when you give up 9 runs, it takes a little while for the ERA to come down. So his ERA is still well over 5. So yeah, it's going to take a little while. They are going to need to do this more in order for these numbers to correct themselves. But yeah, I think you and I have kind of been on the same page all along in that we're not overly concerned necessarily with any of these specific pitchers, looking like shelves of their former selves or something like that. Like, generally speaking, the stuff with Eduardo Rodriguez has looked pretty good. We saw him strike out 12 in a game. Corbin Burns' command has obviously not been what you'd hope for, but the stuff, at least from a velo movement standpoint, is within a very reasonable range early in the season. So, and then you factor in what Merrill Kelly did yesterday, continuing to look a lot better after, of course, being hurt for most of last season. I still think overall, Jack, that this rotation is fairly easy to bet on. I mean, certainly not that like all of these guys are going to be the best versions of themselves, and this is necessarily going to be a top 5 rotation like some people thought it could be. But I still think it's a group that, to me, looks safely above average, at least on paper.
I agree. I mean, look, if they're all able to give them 30 starts and they get 150 starts out of these 5 guys or close to it, then that they're going to be in most of those ball games. They're going to have the opportunity to win the majority of those games. Not to be the Debbie Downer, but the only thing that really long-term gives me the biggest concern is Corbin Burns' whiff rate, especially on the cutter. That's the one I'm really, because that's a 6-year deal, right?
Yeah.
And if not just talking about the first month of the season or the first 3 months of the season, we're talking about the next 6 years. And he had issues with that last year where his swing and miss rates, dropped severely. And then they picked up over the last month and they're kind of back down again, especially on the cutter. So we really need to see that pick up, in my view. He needs to fix that problem. He needs to be that guy. So that it's not like a concern, like, oh my God, what's going on with Corbin Burns? But it's definitely something I'm watching for.
I think that's fair. There a couple of these guys, right? Eduardo Rodriguez is also in that camp of like, this contract does extend well beyond this season. So, you're not just looking for him to be decent for you this year. You're certainly looking for some positive signs moving forward. I think that's a totally fair point. Transitioning over to some numbers from this game as a whole, we mentioned Pfaadt, 5 2/3, 1 run. He really set the tone for the D-backs in this game. There were 4 Diamondbacks home runs in this game. That was was responsible for the vast majority of their offense, all but one run, which came on a Corbin Carroll RBI single. Tim Tawa, I guess, probably stands out among those 4 home runs, Jack. This was his first career homer, and I was a little surprised to see him not get the silent treatment in the dugout. Like that didn't feel right to me.
Yeah, he was just talking about that on the post game. I caught a snippet of it. They just, it gets played after a while, and I think the way that things were rolling, it was just. I think if he'd hit it a little earlier, or if it had a little bit more success at the plate before tonight, they might have done that. But being as he's kind of struggled a little bit at the plate, and I think it just kind of made sense for them to be chill about it. The bottom line is great to see. I made a note. He's up to 86 WRC plus and a 694 OPS with really good defense. So, I think there's more to come with the bat. Obviously, Jordan Lawler is making a big push. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens over the next week or two. But Lawler's been playing second base almost every day. So it was great to see Tawa have this moment. Tawa Power. I kind of love that little hashtag. I'm a big fan of the guy. I think he's a really good athlete. I like watching him play. I like watching him play defense. And I know he's got power. I know he can hit. So, the more opportunity he gets, the better, I think. I still would like to see him get a run of starts, like 3 or 4 in a row, and see if he can get on a roll. I don't think he started back-to-back games yet. So I don't understand that fully. I hate to be in that crowd of second-guessing lineups and everything that Torrey does. But in this case, from a pro development standpoint, I want to see him get at least 3 or 4 starts in a row kind of situation.
I think that's totally fair. Another home run that stood out in this game was that of Lourdes Gurriel, who has not looked particularly locked in at the plate in recent days. The batting average has been hovering in the mid-100s for a while now. I think we all know that Lourdes Gurriel Jr. is about as streaky of a hitter as you will find in this league. I imagine that if we were to look over the past couple years that he's been with the Diamondbacks, we probably could find a stretch like this that has lasted this long over the course of the past couple years. I haven't tried to do that. That's just like my hypothesis. I think it gets kind of people are narrowing in on it more because it's happening at the beginning of the season, but certainly good to see that swing from him, Jack. Maybe this is the beginning of Lourdes kind of turning things around and getting on one of those torrid hot streaks that we've seen him get on in the past.
Well, he hit a couple of balls hard before he hit that moonshot, right?
Yeah.
I think he had a really sharply hit ground ball, and he hit a pretty solid ball to the outfield. And there was just something about that swing tonight, and the way his swing looked in general tonight. I thought, you know what? I'm not going to be surprised. I was even thinking before the home run. I didn't call the shot, but I was thinking before the home run, I wouldn't be surprised if he did something here. And so who knows? With him, that could be the start of one of his unconscious streaks. I think I've texted to you before the Lourdes chart, the WRC plus by month chart. And I made a chart of from Fangraphs where you filter out, it's got to be minimum 60 plate appearances in any given month. And the WRC plus just goes, it's like, that's Lourdes. I mean, he's one of the streakiest hitters you'll find. And so, you've just got to hope that he finds it pretty soon and gets on a run. And if he does, he can carry your lineup for a week or 3.
Last year it was the reverse, right? Where we saw Lourdes get off to an insane start. I remember him in that opening series against the Rockies just hitting, I think it was like 3 or 4 home runs that opening weekend or something like that. So, we're not used to seeing Lourdes' numbers get this low at any point in the season, but I think it's still probably too early to get overly concerned there. Moving on to some of the other guys who homered in this game, Jack, Josh Naylor homered again. We will talk about him more later in the show. Pavin Smith went 2 for 4. He's the other guy who homered for the D-backs in this game. Tim in the chat says, is Pavin going to get enough at bats to win a batting title? And who knows, Jack? What do you think?
I'm absolutely 100% certain that his 625 BABIP is fully sustainable.
Is it actually that high? Is his BABIP in the 600s?
Let me look it up right here. It is 600 on the nose.
That is wild.
Yeah, well, so he really loves hitting in Florida, his home state, right, from Jupiter, Florida. In 2022, he hit a couple of home runs in Lone Depot Park. He had 2 hits yesterday, 2 more hits today, including a homer.
I think I might have lost you on my end. Hopefully it comes back. All right, I think we're good now. All right. Hopefully you guys can all still hear and see us right now. Pavin is hitting 386 on the season. He just continues to be outstanding in this role that the Diamondbacks have sort of created for him. We're going to circle back and talk a little more about Pavin here before too long. But before we get there, it wouldn't be the Snakes Territory podcast, Jack, if we didn't talk about Corbin Carroll at least a little bit. And granted, this was a really terrible Corbin Carroll game by recent Corbin Carroll standards, right? He just went 1 for 5 in this game with an RBI. But that RBI came early on in this game. It was very meaningful at the time, even though the D-backs sort of broke away late in this one. And what we really wanted to talk about is that Corbin Carroll entered today leading Major League Baseball in Fangraphs wins above replacement at 1.6. It is Corbin Carroll number 1, and then right behind him was Aaron Judge. So he has been that good so far this season. And even on a day like this, where it was not his best day at the plate, he struck out twice in this game, but he still managed to come through with one of the bigger hits that the Diamondbacks had tonight.
And it should be noted he also leads in Baseball Reference WAR.
There you go.
For the uninitiated, Jesse and I have been going back and forth for how long about the relative merits of Baseball Reference versus Fangraphs. And Jesse is a Fangraphite. I'm a Baseball Referenceite because of the ease of navigation for me. Both sides are terrific, and I love the metrics on both. But I had to bring everybody into that little inside joke.
Yeah, I don't know how many people out there are also nerding out with us about like the intricacies of Fangraphs versus Baseball Reference. But the point is that generally speaking, people will just use whatever fits their narrative, right? So like if Fangraphs WAR, like if that goes with your narrative, then that's what you use. Or if Baseball Reference WAR jives with your narrative, then you use that. But as you just pointed out, Corbin Carroll entered today in the number 1 spot in on both websites. So just continues to show how incredible he has been up to this point in the season. We're not going to dwell a ton on yesterday's game in this show, but that grand slam that we saw Corbin Carroll hit, Jack, I mean, that was one of the most impressive swings that I've seen by a Diamondback hitter over the last several seasons. And particularly for Corbin Carroll, a guy who for the majority of his career has really struggled to cover especially fastballs up in the zone. And that's exactly what that was. I think last season, that's probably a swing and miss or a pop-up on the infield or in foul territory somewhere. And yesterday, it was, 430 feet in the second deck in Miami. Just very indicative of the turnaround that we've seen for Corbin Carroll over the last year.
As impressive as that swing was, equally impressive was he was talking about the guy's changeup, and he was looking for a changeup.
Yeah.
And he got a 96-mile-an-hour heater at the top of the zone and covered that like nobody's business. It's just incredible. What I tweeted out last night was, Corbin Carroll, if you can't pitch to him at the top of the zone, that's an absolute nightmare for major league pitchers. I mean, that's the line. If he continues to cover the top of the zone like that, then he really is going to run like this for a good chunk of the season. He's going to be an MVP candidate for real for the whole year, I think, based on what we're seeing with this swing change.
Yeah, I'm with you there. It still feels very early to be talking about those things, but yeah, these adjustments look totally legitimate, and we even saw it in spring training, right? Generally, we kind of cast aside spring training stats because it doesn't feel like they mean anything. But every once in a while, you see a guy just totally rake in spring training, and it kind of does carry over to the season. That's certainly been the case with Corbin. Steven pointed out in the chat that Mark DeRosa had an awesome segment on Corbin Carroll's swing today. I did see that as well. Totally worth checking out. Certainly, we on this show can do our best to kind of talk about and analyze the changes that he's made. And Jack is in the clubhouse often and able to tell us what Corbin is saying himself. But Mark DeRosa actually played baseball. And I don't know what your Little League career was like, Jack, but mine was not particularly successful.
I made it to high school.
Okay.
Wasn't a very good hitter. Better pitcher than hitter.
Okay. Well, I was a terrible hitter, and I never even tried to pitch. So that tells you basically everything you need to know about my career. I was hesitant to do this, Jack, but we're going to do it anyway. It's something that's been floating around on social media. I'm not a big fan of like comparing like former players' stats, with guys that you do have on your team after 2 or 3 weeks of the season, because frankly, so much can change at this stage of the year. But I do think it is at least reached the point of being noteworthy. So I'm about to show a comparison between Pavin Smith, who, as we discussed earlier, homered in this game, is now batting .386 with an 1119 OPS. And we are going to compare with Jock Pederson, the man who occupied that very same role essentially for the Diamondbacks last season. And Jack, here's what it looks like, and it is rather stunning. These numbers are entering today, so yeah, I guess you have to add another home run in there for on Pavin Smith's side. But it has been somewhat startling, still early, but still somewhat startling how slow Jock Pederson has been for the Texas Rangers. An .070 batting average with a .277 OPS. He is, I believe it's 3 for 42 to start the season. So certainly not something that anyone expected, regardless of whether you really wanted to see Jock Pederson back with this team this year.
Absolutely a surprise to me that Jock has started this slow. And of course, I was hopeful that Pavin would be able to kind of pick up where he left off last year. He's done that and then some. And then, we just talked about the 600 BABIP. So obviously, regression to the mean will come.
Right.
But I think it's significant just in showing that even once these things start to even out, which they will, that Pavin Smith is more than capable of holding his own as the left-handed DH for this team. And the team does not appear like it's ultimately going to suffer too much from the loss of Jock Pederson, who was great last year and will probably come on and hit very well for Texas. So, it's kind of fun. Some people like to go at it with a little bit more of a Schadenfreude type, attitude. But I think I'll just go with, hey, it's great to see Pavin doing this well, and the fact that the team is not losing anything by replacing Jock with Pavin.
Yeah, I think it says probably more about Pavin Smith than it does about Jock Pederson at this point, because Jock obviously has a long track record of being a very good hitter, and I'm with you that I think he's probably going to figure things out before long. I will say about Pavin that his underlying stats were quite good coming into this game. So that 600 BABIP that you mentioned earlier, while he is certainly going to regress a little bit, he's not going to hit 386 for the entire season. If anyone was expecting him to do that, I don't think it's going to happen. But entering today, he had a 262 expected batting average, a 496 expected slug, 92.3 mile an hour average exit velocity. Like, these are all still numbers that a lot of teams would love to have as someone who's in their, hitting in the middle of their lineup against righties on a day-to-day basis. So I don't think this is smoke and mirrors with Pavin. I still think he probably has more to prove given, what his career looked like before the start of last season. But there isn't a ton of evidence right now underneath the surface that Pavin Smith is just, getting lucky or, dropping in a bunch of bloop singles or anything right now. We're seeing a very different hitter than we've seen for most of his career.
He's become a good hitter, and he's a good hitter on a hot streak. Yeah. I think that's the best way to put it, right? He's a good hitter who's currently in the middle of a hot streak.
I think that's totally fair.
As Torey Lovello and Mike Hazen often say, Pavin Smith can hit.
We've heard that we've heard that a time or two over the past few years. That's for sure. So we wanted to check on Jock Pederson, and we're gonna do the same thing with Christian Walker, a guy who's been, of course, very beloved in the Diamondbacks world over the past few seasons. A lot of people were certainly sad to see him go over the offseason. The Diamondbacks made the decision to trade for Josh Naylor and have him be their everyday first baseman. And again, it's still early, so I'm hesitant to do this. But once again, Jack, we have some pretty lopsided looking numbers here. These numbers are entering today. Josh Naylor, a 913 OPS, which again only increased because he walked and homered in this game tonight. Christian Walker on the other side, not off to a good start at all for the Houston Astros, came into today hitting 164 with a 511 OPS. So I think we're kind of expecting Christian Walker to bounce back, much like we are with Jock Pederson, but still pretty striking how big of a contrast this is at this point in the year.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not flabbergasted that Christian got off to a slow start. I mean, he battled the oblique injury in spring training, right?
Yeah, right.
Which is a recurrence of what bothered him at the end of last year. And clearly, look, it was concerns over not just aging in general, but I think also that oblique that led the team to say, you know what, we're not going there when it was going to take $20 million a year to bring him back. I'm really happy for Walker. The last words I said to him when I said goodbye in the clubhouse the last time I saw him was, go get paid. I mean, he's a great guy. He's a very good human being, and he was very, very kind to everybody that we know, whether it's other players in the clubhouse or, again, to the media. Zach Buchanan's our good friend who used to write for The Athletic and is now editor at the Phoenix New Times. He said it the best. He said, every time I walked away from talking with Christian Walker, I came away smarter. I came away learning something that I didn't know before. And that was absolutely true. But, I'm getting the same kind of vibe from Josh Naylor. I mean, every time we talk to him, when you scratch below the surface and get past the cliches, all of a sudden he starts talking to you about hitting and his approach and what he's trying to do. I mean, we talked the other day about him setting up a pitcher so that he could get him later in the game. I mean, this is what this guy is able to do. He's the quintessential professional hitter. He doesn't strike out. He puts the ball in play, and he's got some pop. So, it's pretty nice replacement. He looks like he's on track for a pretty good, free agency year. So if the D-backs have him motivated, the one thing, the only knock on Naylor beforehand was some people thought, well, he was overweight. He was, I've even heard some people criticize that he was lazy and didn't work hard, but the D-backs coaching staff is saying just the opposite.
Right.
Like he had some early hiccups defensively, and he's gone out there and, he's taking extra ground balls and voluntary ground balls and on Sundays. And I mean, the guy is busting it to improve, and you can see it happening before your eyes on defense. So, I think this guy's pretty motivated, and I think he's going to continue to have a really good season.
We've talked a lot about Geraldo Perdomo's walk and strikeout numbers, and I know Perdomo struck out a few times in the past couple days. His numbers in that regard are still very impressive. But Josh Naylor also is worth mentioning along those lines. At this point in the year, 18 games, 77 plate appearances in. It's a small sample, but 6 strikeouts compared to 9 walks for Josh Naylor. And he did come in with a reputation of this is a guy who has some power, who's not going to strike out as much as you're probably used to seeing power hitters strike out. And Christian Walker was actually sort of in that same category, not quite to the extent that Naylor is, but Walker's strikeout rates were usually pretty reasonable as well. But what you've seen so far, Jack, I mean, 6 strikeouts and 77 plate appearances. I mean, that is basically a third of the league average strikeout rate right now. His ability to not only hit home runs like he did today, but also just put up quality at bats, draw walks. We've seen that from him early in the season. And even he's hitting 328 right now, right? He's been a very complete hitter so far in this young season.
Yeah, it's super impressive. Again, D-backs not skipping a beat and maybe coming out even a little bit ahead, certainly of where they might have been, had they not made any changes there. So, more power to them. When we looked at all the preseason projections, it seemed like the offense was going to take a few beats back. But so far, they have not. They're right there, I think second in the league in runs scored coming into today, and first in OPS in the National League. So, it's pretty impressive. And Pavin and Naylor are right there in the middle of it. I mean, this is with Cattell out since April 4th, basically.
Right. I will say with regard to these comparisons, again, I was hesitant to even jump into this because it's so early in the season. You could have run a comparison very similar to this, Jack, a year ago between Josh Rojas, who is with the Seattle Mariners, of course, and Eugenio Suarez, and it would have looked very different from where things ended up, right? Josh Rojas had a really, really good start. I think probably well beyond the first 2-3 weeks of the season. And Gino, of course, his struggles last season lasted for several months. And then you look up at the end of the year and Gino had a 3,100 season and Josh Rojas was, struggling to find playing time. So it's really too early in the year to be, the Diamondbacks made the right decision in going with Pavin over bringing Jock Pederson back, or the Diamondbacks made the right decision trading for Josh Naylor over re-signing Christian Walker. I'm not comfortable making a claim like that at this point in the year. But as far as the first 3 weeks or so, yeah, the Diamondbacks at this point are in a much better position than I guess they hypothetically would have been had they gone those other directions.
The only counterpoint I'll give you there is the money.
Sure.
Right? I mean, they filled those roles with players that, even if they didn't project them to be as good as Walker and Pederson, they certainly were making a lot less money, and it gave the team flexibility elsewhere. Right. So I think they had a reasonable expectation to get close to the level of production that those other players might have provided at a much, much less. Naylor's making $14 million, Walker's making $20 million, and it's a 3-year commitment into his late 30s. Jock Pederson got $236, I think. And they're paying Pavin Smith, first year arbitration wages. So, that's a huge difference and gave them a lot of flexibility in other areas where they were able to then utilize those resources elsewhere. So I am comfortable saying they made the right choice in doing so, because not based on the statistics to date, but because where the projections were and are versus the money being spent at those slots, I think it was always looking to be a good value proposition.
I think that's fair. I mean, yeah, like if the Diamondbacks re-sign Jock and re-sign Christian Walker, is Corbin Burns on this team right now? Probably not, right? So yeah, I think those are very fair points. And with regard to Pavin in particular, like even if the Diamondbacks had re-signed Jock Pederson and plugged him into that role and he was hitting really well, it still would have been, to your point, it would have been kind of a waste in some sense if Pavin is indeed the hitter that he appears to be right now, right? Like, sure, it's like Jock Pederson was awesome last year, bring him back, why not? But if Pavin Smith is actually capable of putting up numbers similar to that, then yeah, he's way more affordable, and you certainly would hate to see someone like him get, stuffed down in AAA again, where he's just not getting the opportunity that it really looks like he deserves.
And full disclosure, when I wrote my offseason plan, part of it was bring Jock Pederson back,
right?
Albeit at a lower number than he ended up signing for it. So I was wrong then, and the team was right.
That's very humble of you to admit that, Jack.
Gotta call him like you see him.
I think that was one of the challenges, right? Analyzing this team over the offseason was like, what is Pavin Smith? It was hard to pencil him into the role that he's been occupying right now, where he's in the middle of the lineup and he's doing a great job in that role. But, in December, it was like, well, we've seen this guy be really good for 150 plate appearances or whatever it was in 2024, but that's all that we have to go on. And I was at the winter meetings, and so were you, talking with Mike Hazen in his hotel room, and he admitted that, like, there isn't really a perfect way to evaluate a player like that. It's really challenging to evaluate a player who's been one version for a fairly long time and then over a smaller sample look like a completely different hitter, which he did last year. So I guess good on the Diamondbacks for kind of recognizing what they had, when I think a lot of other people were not at that point with Pavin Smith, kind of thinking that maybe he was about to reach the end of the road in this organization.
Just one last word from me on Pavin. I mean, the biggest difference for me is he previously always had pretty good batted ball metrics and average exit velos, but it was a little bit too many of those hard hit balls came on the ground.
Right.
And what looked so different to me last year, and it wasn't just a 3-homer game against the Astros, was that he was hitting so many of those hard hit balls on lines and in the air. And that was the difference maker for me. It's like, if you take this guy's already very good batting eye and already good exit velocities, but just channel some of those exit velocities into balls in the air,
Right.
you have something. And that's what I saw different last year. And it seems sustainable. It just, the swing change was probably a very minor tweak for him to get the ball in the air a little bit more and off the ground. And, he's maintaining it. So it's pretty cool.
Aaron Hughes in the chat is throwing shade at you, Jack. He said, "Hey, Jack, one of us always believed in Pavin." So,
oh, for sure. We used to, have all sorts of debates early last year, but the guy made changes, and he's done what he had to do to show that he belongs.
You could kind of understand where the Diamondbacks were coming from with those comments that you referenced earlier that we've heard many times over the years, that Pavin Smith can hit. You have a guy here who clearly has always had good plate discipline, and his bat speed, now that, from the start of last year when we got bat speed metrics, it was clear early on that his bat speed wasn't elite, but it was pretty good. And so you combine like pretty good bat speed with excellent plate discipline, you can kind of understand why a team would really believe that eventually things would come together. And that certainly seems to be the case. I think you're right that elevating the ball more has been a really, really important thing for him.
Yep, absolutely.
Well, we could talk about Pavin Smith for another 2-3 hours, but we'll.
I'm sure Aaron would be happy.
Yeah, I'm sure Aaron would enjoy every minute of it. But that is all that we have for this first ever post-game edition of Snakes Territory. We very much appreciate all of you joining us here in the comments. I can see all of your comments. I know putting them on the screen is a little weird at this point. We don't have like a great system for doing that, but know that every person who has commented throughout the show, we've been able to see what you've said. We very much appreciate everyone who's hopped on with us and contributed in that way. If you haven't already, be sure to drop a like on this video. Seems like many of you who are here have already done that, but if you haven't, we very much appreciate it. It makes YouTube happy and tells YouTube to push our video to more people, which we very much appreciate. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel here on Snakes Territory if you haven't already. We're approaching the 500 mark, and would love to get there. Would love to get there before too long. You can find me on Twitter at Jesse N. Friedman. You can find Jack at ShoeWizard59. Our show is at Snakes Territory. And of course, as always, be sure to check out the work of Jack as well as Aaron and the whole Diamondbacks on SI crew over at si.com/MLB/Diamondbacks. A lot of great work over there. Bookmark the site, come back every day. I'm amazed, Jack, at how much you guys are able to publish on a daily basis. It's pretty remarkable. Jack, anything final from you before we say goodbye here?
I think it's going to be an early start tomorrow. I got to write a game preview at 6:30 in the morning. So I'm going to get to bed early and see you all tomorrow.
All right. Well, thank you again so much for joining us here on the show. We really appreciate it. Also, I guess my last plea would be if you're one of those audio-only people, if you're listening to us right now, we'd really appreciate it if you'd leave us a rating and review over wherever you get your podcasts. That also helps us out a ton here in the early stages of the show. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll be back very, very soon with another episode of Snakes Territory.